All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me here in my living room. Thank you for those who went out to the library to try this experiment of me working from home and you being in the library while everybody else is also at home. So again, thank you guys for coming. What we're going to talk about tonight is we are going to discuss the first residents of North Bergen, the first residents of New Jersey, really. We will talk about the Lenni Lenape Native Americans. And a lot of people always ask, well, why do we talk about them? And well, we like to bring them to the attention every November because it is Native American Heritage Month. And you know what? There's a lot of stuff that they set up for us here in North Bergen and Hudson County before we or our ancestors or anybody else knew what was going on here. So I will share a screen somehow. Of course, there's always some type of issue on my end. That is not what I need to share with you. So let's get rid of that. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that. As I try to figure out, I had it all set up here a second ago. Okay.
Do you need me to make you co-host, Michael? That might help. Hold on.
I'm not sure if that it should be
Got
up
it.
now. There we go. I lost it in my mishmash of things that I have going on here. Okay, so we will talk about the Lenni Lenape, right? Who are the first residents of Hudson County, of North Bergen, of New Jersey. Okay,
Sorry,
so we will
Michael.
take it.
We can see just the Zoom screen. We can't see the PowerPoint.
Okay, maybe you do have to make me a host then. I'm not sure. Let me.
Hold on. Let me go ahead and make you co-host just because I can't possibly make anything worse, right?
Oh, you know what? How about now if I do that?
Oh, perfect. Yes, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Okay, perfect then. All right, there we go. So let's talk about these folks, right? And let's talk about what is in a name. Okay. It is quite often, right? Most of us are familiar with some of the big names of Native Americans, the Iroquois, the Cherokee, the Sioux, right? Our folks that we have a tie to are the Lenni Lenape, right? And it means something in their language, their Algonquin language. Lenni meaning they are of genuine, it could mean pure, it could mean real, it could mean original. And then tie that together with Lenape, which translates to man. So again, when we look at these folks and when we talk about their history, it's important to keep in mind that when we're talking about them, they're revered not just by themselves, but also by the natives that are surrounding, right? The folks who will be living in what will become New York, right? And the folks that are living out in what will become Pennsylvania and Delaware, right? They are revered, the Lenni Lenape, as these kind of people that everybody else comes from, right? So there is this kind of legend even within their time of who they are and the importance they have in the native culture, in the native world. Now, obviously, they did not call where they lived New Jersey, okay? They referred to it, and again, a lot of the references we're going to look at tonight, they come from kind of Dutch interpretations of the Algonquin language, right? So even what we're looking at is kind of like we should take with a grain of salt, okay? Considering the Lenape, right? They're speaking, the Dutch are listening, and the Dutch are writing things down. So we'll even notice a lot of like Dutch like linguistics thrown into some of these Algonquin words. But I digress, right? So the Lenape referred to their land as Lenape Hoken, right? Which comprises today, okay, of the entire state of New Jersey, Manhattan Island, Staten Island, Brooklyn, Queens, Rockland County, and parts of eastern Pennsylvania. So they had a very large territory that they claimed as their own. And again, what does it mean? And it's a simple word. It translates just to the land of the Lenape. And we're going to see when we get towards the end of this that a lot of the namings of things really tie back to like the geography of the land. And a lot of it still reigns true today. Now, at the time of European arrival, so when we go back to, and you go back to your history classes and you learn about Henry Hudson, okay, arriving in Weehawken and you know, kind of surveying, there's a rough estimate that there's only about 15,000 of them when they arrive. And again, we're talking, you know, the 16th century at that point. They lived through 80 different seasonal settlements across the state. So they travel with the seasons, and we're going to see some traveling that has to happen due to like marriage purposes and things like that. But they do crisscross the state quite a lot. Most of the areas though that are established, they are, and especially in the world that we live in today in Hudson County, they are all along and with access to the Hudson River. So a lot of the campments and settlements would have been found on the Hudson. They would have been found on the Hackensack, on the Passaic rivers, on a lot of the tributaries that led into those rivers. So again, Jersey City was a big one for where these folks would have lived for a good portion of the year. Now, this map is an old Dutch map. It is a bit sideways, okay? So if we look towards the left-hand corner, just to give us some reference, that is Long Island down in the left-hand corner, right? And this main river, right, or this main thread that is running through, this is going to be the Hudson River. I'm not sure if you can see my mouse there, but we're kind of high. I'm trying to highlight the Hudson River. All right, and then the Hackensack River will be over here, okay? Again, something I always like to point out to folks in Hudson County is we're barely connected to the state of New Jersey. We are really a peninsula in geographical terms. Either way, when we look at this map though, the Dutch do highlight a few of the tribes. They do leave out the tribe that we will mostly be talking about in regards to the Lenape with North Bergen, but some of the branches we can see are the Sanhekins, right? The Tapans, the Makwas, the Manhattans, right? And again, these are the folks who are living here before, and the Dutch are set up in a fort down in New Amsterdam and kind of periodically coming into our neck of the woods for farming and lumber purposes. Also, I like to point out, because I just think it's extremely interesting, is the amount of islands that used to be off the coasts of New York and New Jersey. And you can kind of see these small dots that are just kind of all over the place. And we'll talk about why they're important when we talk about the diet of the Lenapes. All right. Now, again, this is the region they would have called home, right? Present day state of New Jersey, right? Into New York and Long Island and down into Delaware and Pennsylvania. So they covered a decent amount of territory. Now, the language they speak, okay, is an Algonquin dialect. The language itself is split. It's a Munsee dialect in the north and an Unami dialect in the south. Now, they did have common words, Zashquan for corn, Tuma for wolf, okay? So they did share a very common, they did have the commonalities, but they did have, like all dialects, a little bit of a difference. Some words that were the same for food, right? Again, I will not try to pronounce this first word here. I massacre it constantly. All right, but they did have some different words, right? Again, to kind of speak, I guess, more plainly within their own, groups and confines. Now, the Lenape actually will divide themselves up into 3 territories. And again, I guess they even answer the age-old question of New Jersey, right? Is Central Jersey a thing? The Lenape clearly do have Central Jersey as a region. Again, the Munsee dialect, right, is prevalent in the north, right? Then you have a northern Unami, right? You have a southern Unami, and then you have these possible Munsee dialects like out in Long Island. So these folks, right, again, are going to talk, and I always want to point out geography when we talk about these folks. We can see that there is a divide between north and south, right, very clearly in the Raritan River. And we can see that it starts in like your Perth Amboy area today, and your Sayreville area and runs through present-day New Brunswick and kind of cuts off this whole central area. And then this division point in the south is going to be like where the Pine Barrens begin. So again, they're using geography, the natural geography of the state to kind of even break off where, all right, they are operating, where are we doing certain cultural aspects and speaking certain languages. So I always think that's very cool to point out. Now, again, we do have a map, right, that did have a lot of the tribes in a more localized area, right? The Tapan, right? And again, some of these things should sound familiar, right? The names of our towns and places still have bear these names, right? But we have the Tapan, we have the Pomptons, the Aquinox, right? The Hackensack, the Raritans, right? Those are for us up here in the north, right? And then you get like your Navasink, right? And your southern tribes as well. And again, they are all over. Even when you look into upstate New York, Haverstraw, right? Minnesink, okay, in Long Island, the Canarsie, right? So these are names that have lingered on throughout time here for us. Again, here's another one of these great older Dutch maps. It gives us kind of this insight to what the world would have looked like. Now, this one has a lot more Dutch owners labeled on it and a little less of the natives kind of calling out where they would have been. But again, it's always great to see this kind of world that would have been, that they would have called home to. Now, their society is broken up very differently. They deal with their immediate family most, then their clan, then like the friends of the clan, then the village, all right, and then surrounding or familiar villages, and then those who spoke their language, right? So this is how they viewed who was most important to them. Who did they look to for answers? Who did they look to for help, right? So again, it's really just who's in the house or the home, and then slowly the circle spreads out a little bigger, a little wider. And again, this is all done mainly through just the usage of like trying to figure out what to do in times of need or in times of trouble, right? Where are you going to go for help? Now, they are broken up, like I said, into 3 different sections, right? The language is spoken differently in the 3 different sections. They will also identify by different animals in these 3 different sections. So for us in the north, the turtle will be the representative of the clan. Again, I always like to point this out, right? If you ever have time to head out to Turtleback Zoo, you could go right next door to Turtleback Rock, which is an old ancient native location where the rock coming out of the ground actually looks like a turtle shell coming out. So it's pretty cool. In the central part of the state, they identified with the wolf. And then down in the south, they identify as the turkey. So again, this is all kind of societal identifications. And this is going to, again, play a huge role in their marriage practices, which are really, really unique. But again, when you only have a population of about 15,000 people, right, it's going to make a lot of sense when we talk about it. Now, when we talk about their culture, they're matrilineal clans, right? Very different from what the Europeans would bring. The Europeans would bring a very patriarchal society. The Lenape, they're practicing matrilineal clans. So the children belong to the mother's clan, okay? The mother's brother is actually going to be more significant in raising the children than their own father, right? So that's like a really wild thing. And again, we'll talk about why in a second. Leadership is going to be passed on through the maternal line. So that idea that like we have of kings and like Henry VIII always wanting a boy, right? That's not how they're operating. Moms are running the shot. The women are running the shots in this society. Women could even remove leaders that they disapprove of, right? If the women of the clan decide this guy is not working out, he's gone. Women are also going to be in charge of agricultural production. And again, they're going to divide the harvest accordingly. So women in the tribe would make the decision of what are we going to grow this season? How much are we going to grow? Who's going to get it? And how much are we going to trade? So again, there's a totally different society, right? And lastly, newlyweds would live with the bride's family, right? There was no, taking your wife and running off, right? It was no, you're gonna go live with your father-in-law at that point. So again, very different from the world we live in today. Now, men, they didn't just sit around and do nothing. Okay, they were productive as well. Okay, but they were there really just for production. They were there to hunt. They were there to do the manual labor of farming, for building, and for protection. Okay. Um, Men would marry outside of their clan, right? And again, this is a huge thing. And again, I always like to point this out to students and stuff because history textbooks do a pretty bad job at explaining Native Americans, right? We get the very European perspective, the American cowboy perspective of these savages who don't know anything, and this is evidence that it's completely malarkey, so to say, right? They're going to marry outside of their clan. So if I'm a guy, I'm a native from up north, I'm heading to the south to marry a woman, right? So if I'm a turtle clan, I will marry a woman from a turkey clan. And if we have a child, they will marry a wolf clan member. Okay, so there is this really intricate way of making sure inbreeding is not happening. And it's something I'm assuming, and again, I'm assuming only because it's not like they had records to keep any of these things, but I'm assuming they might have learned the hard way that this was not a good thing. And just over time, they figured out that this is something they need to do. They practiced something called blooding, and men would be responsible for training future warriors. Again, and they would take, younger guys and lead them on raids against other tribes. And again, this was what men did in the Lenape society. Now, their diet was very simple. It practiced companion planting, which is also, if you're a gardener, it's kind of hard to do. It's kind of hard to pull this off successfully. But they would grow maize, corn in March. And as the corn stalk grew, they would plant beans at the base of it, okay, in May. And the reason they would plant beans at the base of the corn is because, well, the bean plant will grow up the corn stalk, right? It will give the beans somewhere to grow. And then by the summertime, they will plant squash. And again, they're doing that because now the squash plant is growing in a vine along the ground. It's keeping moisture in the ground, and they're able to grow corn, beans, and squash well into the fall. So again, this is very complex, a complex farming system that even when the Europeans show up, they're kind of like flabbergasted by what they're looking at, right? Because the natives are not planting in farms the way we consider a farm today. They're kind of just planting a little bit over here. There's some over there. And the natives, the Europeans show up and they're like, there's just food everywhere here, right? There's just food. They would hunt. They would practice their own hunting techniques. Most famously, they were famous for in going after deer and driving them into bodies of water. And then using the ability of the animal to not know how to swim or behave in the water to take advantage of that and then be able to harvest the animal that way. And then this one always makes people a little grossed out, but remember, we're talking 600-700 years ago at this point. They were big seafood eaters, okay? And again, yeah, they're eating seafood out of the Hudson River, out of the Hackensack River, out of the Passaic River. And again, yes, I can see people looking around, right? Again, that sounds horrible today, all right? But this was a huge main source of food. And that goes back to those islands in that original map. They're very small sandbars, but they are put on the map for a reason. And the reason is the natives are harvesting oysters there, right? They're harvesting clams there. So when the Dutch arrive, they also notice, like, wow, like these people have it figured out. Like they know where to get food. And again, this is all these practices that they are going to enable. All right. It's very cool. They did have a very complex religion, right? And again, I always slaughter this name, but again, it's my North Bergen accent. But their creator was known as Keshlemakong. All right, please don't ask me to repeat that one. That's as good as it's going to get for tonight. Um, they believe that their creator had zero involvement in their daily lives, that they just kind of went about their life. This creator existed, and like that was it. He just kind of was there. They believe that Manitowak is the life spirit. And that's really the god or the spirit or the deity that's going to play a bigger role for them. He's the one that's honored at ceremonies and different rituals. And it's believed that he would speak to them through dreams and different visions. So again, this is their kind of religion, right? When we look a little more, they had Metatuaks, right, which are the healers, they're spiritual guides, they're religious leaders. They could only communicate back, right, with Manitowak, right? So Manitowak could talk to anybody, but only these guys could talk back to them, right? You had Ota, which are wooden dolls that are carved annually, and they were said to give like healing powers and provide luck for the upcoming times in people's lives. They would have excuse me again, my North Bergen accent, tongue twisting is coming up. My Niaku, right? Those were animal guides that were associated with the vision quests that young Lenape men would go on. So as they entered the wilderness of, what would have been presumably like Upper Bergen County, right? Upper Passaic County, your Hunterdon County, your Sussex County, or even as far south down into the Pine Barrens, right? These were the animals that were believed to come and guide these young men through their journey, right, into adulthood. Now, this is very cool. I went down a deep rabbit hole when I first found this one out, and I think it's really cool to look at. But they used what was called the turtle calendar. So the turtle calendar had 13 moons, right? So 13 months and 28 days in each month. All right. And they based that on a turtle shell. That equals out 364 days plus 1 day for rest. Okay. So again, we follow a 12-month calendar with 365 days. And again, it's been, with Roman and Julian and all these other calendars. And, these folks are practicing this just simply based off the back of a turtle. Okay. On the day of rest, though, every year, all wars that the Lenape had with people came to an end. Debts that people had were forgiven. And it was really just this general day of peace and reflection within Lenape culture, right? Again, they follow this 13-month calendar. They based it on 13 moon cycles in the year. And again, about 27 to 29 days between each cycle. So again, it's pretty interesting. If you go down this rabbit hole, you will see that pretty much every turtle in New Jersey, or the native ones anyways, do follow this pattern of the kind of 13 squares or shapes in the middle and the about 28 boxes on the outside. So if you're in Hudson County Park tomorrow, you go by the lake and see if you can count all the squares on a turtle. All right. Now, let's talk about the folks who would have been the most closest to us, right? And that is going to be the Akin-Kinshaki, right? We know them today as the Hackensack, okay? They are going to have some major settlements in places that we are still going to kind of refer to today. So again, their summer encampment would have been down in Gomena, excuse me, I'm reading what it's actually called, but Napa, right, which would be converted to eventually Communipal, right, down in Jersey City, that neighborhood. At any given summer, you could probably find about 1,000 people down on the Hudson River, kind of at the foot of Communipal Avenue. Smaller camps along the Mehi-Kennetuk right? In Appelhagen, right? That's a tongue twister. What that is the Hudson River. That is their name for it, right? And then Appelhagen is the name for Hoboken, okay? Or what will become Hoboken. Tantaquin, right, is going to be their winter encampment. They moved a little bit off the Hudson River and they moved out into what we really assume to be Overpeck Park in Bergen County. And the reason that that's assumed is because, well, you could take Overpeck Creek in and out of the Hudson River, right? But you're off the off the Hackensack River. And you're off the Hackensack River enough where you won't really get the harsh winters that the Hackensack River would produce. So again, it's kind of a safe haven for them. Now, again, this would have been kind of the settlement, right? This is coming out of a Dutch history book. This is of an unnamed Lenape settlement. However, most of the book does discuss like activity in New York and what will become kind of Hudson and Bergen County. So one could believe this could be the Bergen County settlement, right? So it's again very interesting to kind of see how they're living in log homes and easily constructed homes. Here's something that's just a little more of a modern remake of what one of their native homes would have looked like. You can see small kind of trash pile off to the side for supplies and things like that. Okay, now they have allies, right? They work closely with the Raritans. And the Raritans are the branch of Lenape that are out on Staten Island. The Aquinox are a tribe that's located out in Passaic County. The Tapan, right? They are currently, well, the area they would have operated in would have been up on the state line near Pascack Valley, up in that area. The Pomptons, which again, another area they would have operated, would have been out in Passaic County. All right. The Wappinger, right? They're a little further up in the Hudson Valley. And then the Canarsie and the Rockaway, who are out on Long Island. And again, these names, the way they're written and the way I'm even pronouncing them, right? These are the Dutch variations, right, of these names. Okay, so even if Rockaway, for example, right, there's definitely no K in the original spelling of the name. It's definitely from the Dutch translation. Now again, the Akin-Kinshakis, right, they belong to the Turtle Clan. And again, the Turtle Clan, they're held in the highest regards. They are viewed as peacemakers. Okay, they were governed by a paramount chief. However, the chief was held to the decisions of a caucus, right? Which is, again, very interesting way that they would operate, right? You have a guy in charge. However, the decision gets made by the group and then enacted by the chief, right? It's a very interesting way. It's where we get the modern word caucus from this practice. Their last major chief is a gentleman by the name of Oratam, who is originally a Tapan member. And then, through mating practices and marriage practices, he makes his way down into the Akin-Kinshakis. That is a bust of Oratam. So if you're ever out in Hackensack, especially out in Hackensack City Hall, you could go visit this bust. It is sitting in the main entrance of their City Hall. So that's pretty cool to go see. Again, he's on the seal of the city of Hackensack. And we can even see his mark is even there, right? Because again, he is going to be one of the men who will make some deals with the Europeans and a lot of trades of land deals and things. And his mark was kind of a backwards 3 or an E, right? There's really no understanding of where he got the mark from. But that was how he signed off on a lot of different agreements made with the Dutch. So it's pretty cool that the city really honors that heritage. If you're ever down in Jersey City, in the old Brennan Courthouse, which I highly advise everybody going to and just take a walk around. It's beautiful in there. They have a piece of artwork on there by Francis Millet called The Repulse of the Dutch. And this pays tribute to the natives that when Henry Hudson shows up, there is in his journals that they try to go ashore and the Lenape band that is there opened fire on them, bow and arrow, right, and really chase them back off. A lot of folks believe it to be kind of in Bayonne where it happened, but again, it's Hudson County, right, and it is forever enshrined in our county courthouse there. Little closer view of the detail in there. So again, it's a great piece of art. There's a ton of great art in that building, which I highly suggest everybody take a ride down there and take a look. All right. So now we do have to talk about like kind of how things do go sideways very fast for the Lenape once the Dutch realize they're here to settle. So in the winter of 1643, there is a Dutch military leader by the name of William Kieft, right? And he will attack a settlement located at Pavonia. So we're talking down in Jersey City. Kieft, right, will effectively lead a massacre of 120 men, women, and children. The attack is completely unwarranted. It's a land grab by the Dutch, and the attack is going to unite the tribes that we all talk about in the area, and they will wage a war for 2 years against the Dutch. 1,500 natives will invade New Netherlands. So they will gather up. You will have the Lenape, you will have the Tapan, the Rockaway, the Canarsie, right? The Manhattas, like they will all band together and effectively try to starve the Dutch out in downtown Manhattan, in New Amsterdam. They will destroy 20 years of work, the natives. And the New Netherlands settlement itself, right? The New Amsterdam settlement becomes just so overcrowded with refugees, just trying to flee these attacks. Like they can't get people out fast enough. And the natives just sit back once they see what's going on. And they kind of just sit back and just wait for these people to, just kind of either A, all leave, or B, just kind of suffer the consequences of being in a city under siege. It's estimated, though, that the Dutch, though, will kill about 1,600 natives during the war. And the natives will only kill about 20 Dutch colonists. Most famously, they killed a young girl by the name of Anne Hutchinson, right, which she then becomes kind of a rally cry for the Dutch to fight back. The natives at one point had 70 unified tribes involved in this fight. And again, the New Netherlands and New Amsterdam colony was on the verge of collapse. And then after 2 years of fighting, a peace treaty was reached. And the natives backed off and, cooler heads prevailed for a while. Now, we'll talk about closer to home, right? Another great piece of artwork is located right in town. If you go down to the library, I almost said, excuse me, if you go down to the post office down on Tunnelly Avenue, you can go in and see the purchase of territory of North Bergen from the Indians, right? It is a great piece of artwork. It is massive. It is huge to go in and see this thing. Now, the piece of art itself is created by an artist by the name of Avery Johnson. He started it in 1939 and finished it in 1942, right? So the painting takes quite a long time. It's part of FDR's New Deal programs to put artists back to work. Even that again, I almost called it the library. That post office itself is a WPA project, right? That is a project, or that building was put together by men from North Bergen in order to stimulate the economy, to put some men back to work. And this artist, Avery Johnson, who is not from North Bergen, was chosen to paint the mural inside. Johnson was instructed by the Department of Treasury, right, to paint something that's of local interest and something that's related to the area. And I like to always point out that Johnson's is very cool because he's the only artist in Hudson County to have a Native American mural. If you go to the one in West New York or the one out in Kearney, right, or the one down in Jersey City or Bayonne, it's all about the geography of the area. All right, it's all about of something that's happening related to the town. He's the one that paints something historical, which I think is again another nice little nod, not just to the Native Americans, but just a nod to the history of the area. Now, what do they buy this thing for? Right? On January 30th of 1658, the northern end of what will become Hudson County and the southern end of what will become Bergen County are sold to the Dutch. So what's the price, right? Well, what are we paying for this thing, right? Well, we are paying 80 fathoms of wampum, 20 fathom of cloth, 12 brass kettles, 6 guns, a double brass kettle, and a half a barrel of strong beer. Okay, that's what they are going to buy. Present day, northern Hudson County and southern Bergen County. So I just want, just think of what we're talking about here. We're talking about North Bergen, Union City, West New York, Weehawken, Fairview, Cliffside, Fort Lee, right? All the way up into Englewood, right? We're talking an area that is worth, I don't even know what it could be worth today. But we do know what this is worth. Because some historians in 1917 put an estimation on what this might have been worth. And they estimated that in 1917, all that material put together cost $675. So I did the math, and the math of $675 in 1917 to today is they bought it for about $15,000, right? So the Dutch really got the better deal, all right, out of that one. By 1750, so as we're getting closer to the Revolutionary War, the Lenape will sell all of their land rights to the entire state of New Jersey. And the sale to the British at that point is in total $5,000. So the British buy what's left of the state of New Jersey for $231,000. Right, so that is the price that New Jersey cost back in 1750. Now, we still live with a lot of Lenape holdover, right? There's a ton of towns in our state that are named for Algonquin words, right? And again, depending where you are, you're actually speaking a different dialect of the natives' language, right? So if you are ever in Absecon, right, or Absecon, and again, I know a lot of these towns, people argue over the saying, but I'm going to give my good old Hudson County saying of these names, right? But Absecon, right, means place of swans. Manalapan, right, means the land of good bread, right? Cheshtuk means the place of hogs, right? Mantalokan, a sandy place. Hohogus, meaning red cedars. Manasquan, where the stream of the island of Squaws, right? Hapakon means pipestone. Matawan, hill on either side. Kittatinny, right? The endless mountain. Metuchen, dry firewood. Mawa, the meeting place valley. Parsippany, the place where the river winds through. Manahawkin, right? A place where these is good land, right? And Peapack, right? The place of water roots. Now, and again, most of these places, if you've been to them, right, you realize these places, the geographical descriptions still match today, right? Now, places you may know, right? Gaelmenopah, right? We talked about this one earlier. It means on the other side of the river, and it is Communipaw, right? It's Jersey City. It's the other side of the river from New York. The Akinkanshaki means flat stream or stony ground. And again, when you think of Hackensack, or if you've ever done any work in your yard in North Bergen or anywhere in Hudson County, you will hit bluestone, right? You will hit rock everywhere. So like they're even realizing, hey, this is what's here. This is the geography, the flat stream part, referring to the mighty Hackensack River, right? It's a very flat river at all times. So it's pretty interesting to see that. Hasmus or Haramis down in Jersey City is a crow's marsh. All right. Again, Hoboken, right? Hoboken comes from this, meaning the land of the tobacco pipe. And again, if you're familiar with Hoboken and you're familiar with what's underneath Hoboken, there is a lot of soapstone, under Hoboken. This is places where they would have dug it out and created, pipes of kinds, right? And different types of materials that was easy to carve. So again, pretty interesting there. Another famous one, right? Lackawanna, right? Where we all know the train, but it means the place where the stream that forks. All right. And then Param, I can't even say that one. I can't even try to massacre that one enough. But surprisingly, it means where there is worthwhile land, this turns into Paramus. Okay. So again, very interesting. And then Mannahatta, right? The island of many hills. It's Manhattan. Okay. And again, we don't notice the hills of Manhattan too often, right? However, if you start downtown and try to go to the George Washington Bridge, you will know you are walking up a massive hill, right? You are walking up several hills. All right. Passaic, right? Meaning the valley, water that flows through the valley. It's Passaic. Okay. So again, you have these words that we all know. Secaucus, right? Meaning snakes. It's Secaucus, right? And remember, Secaucus before anything was all marshland. So it would make sense that there's a ton of snakes out there. All right. And then Weehawken, which means at the end. It's Weehawken, right? So again, these are words that we are all using, and we've been using them for most of our lives, and most of us know they come from some native origin. However, now you know the actual meanings, right? Now you know the actual where they come from. So that's pretty cool. All right. That is what I have for you folks. So I'd like to thank you first and foremost for joining me. It was awesome to have you. I'll gladly take a few questions if we have any, and I'll do my best to try to fill in some blanks for us.
Awesome, thank you. Before we go to questions from our live audience, I do want to ask some of the questions from the chat box. So I'm just going to read that out loud. And again,
Sure.
anyone watching from home, please write any questions you have in the chat box. So the first question I have is in regards to the very first map that you showed us, the one with the small island chains on it.
Sure, let's go back to it.
She wants to know, where are the islands now? What are those islands called?
They are non-existent now. So what we could look at especially if we look at Manhattan, okay, and we look at the development of the areas, most of these islands are kind of just removed. Two islands that are still, or three islands that we would know today that are still around, completely different sizes and completely different shapes, would be Liberty Island, Ellis Island, and Governor's Island. Those are going to be three of the lasting islands. In fact, Ellis Island and Liberty Island, prior to what they were used for, are known as Oyster Island. Okay. But the rest of these islands, they're going to be kind of connected to the mainland, right? As New York City grows, as Long Island grows, especially when they're creating the subway system, that dirt has to go somewhere. And that dirt ended up on the banks of the Hudson to expand Manhattan. Even, for example, for us, when you go down to Jersey City, if you ever happen to be in Liberty State Park, most of Liberty State Park is landfill from train projects, right? Train construction projects, tunneling projects. A lot of the dirt from the Holland and Lincoln tunnels will end up in what will become Liberty State Park. So unfortunately, a lot of these islands just ceased to exist, just because they were in the way, or they were absorbed into the mainland of New York and New Jersey. Excellent,
thank you. The next question that we have in the chat, is there a book you would recommend on this topic?
Oh, a book. Offhand, I can't think of one. When I was setting this up, if you go to the North Bergen Historical Society's blog page, there is a whole write-up on this with all our sources attached to it. So offhand, I can't think of one. But you could always, and it's a great museum in New York, to reach out to them, is the Native American Museum, which is down in Bowling Green, down by Battery Park. It's a great resource center for information on the Native Americans.
Excellent. Next question in the chat box. So what finally happened to the Lenape?
Okay, so the Lenape themselves, they kind of face the same fate that most of the natives face. They are just pushed further west. They are pushed so far out of New Jersey that they actually stop being associated with New Jersey, and they just get bunched in with the Delaware, right? Which again, Delaware is not even a native term. It's actually named for a Dutch guy, the Delaware, right? So the Lenape get mushed in with another group of natives who are then kind of just forced out of the East Coast. There are some folks who still exist today that do have some Lenape ties. They're mostly out in Oklahoma. We do have two. We have the main Lenape group that is still left in New Jersey, right? The Ramapo have a small reservation up in Ramapo, New Jersey. But that's really all that's ever happened to them. They're pushed out, they're forced out, and then the Ramapo, who stuck around, really fought countless legal cases to just gain their status back as natives and reclaim some territory that they lost. But that's really what happened to the Lenape here in New Jersey.
Excellent, thank you. The next question is actually for me. Will the slides be available for our use after the presentation? We are recording tonight's presentation. It will be available on the library's YouTube channel within a week or two after today's date, so you can look for it there. Next questions. What are those animals on the map that you're showing?
Sure, yeah. So I mean, most recognizable will probably be the giant turkey, right? These are definitely beaver. Whether if we want to say it looks like a beaver or some type of nightmarish creature, that's to each of us own, but those would be beaver. Again, beaver up here, as you can see, they're pulling fish out of the river. And then I always assume this is maybe perhaps muskrat. I'm not sure what this is. But again, that's added in because this map is created by Dutch settlers who are trying to encourage the Dutch in the Netherlands to come over. And again, it's weird for us to think about this, but like people in Europe prior to the Europeans coming over never saw a turkey, right? It's not an animal that's native to Europe. It's an animal that's native to here in the United States, or what will become the United States. Even the abundance of some animals that they did, beavers are in Europe, right there, everywhere. But the abundance of them and the size of them that were here, right? They're added to just show, hey, look at what's here. So that's why the animals are added on.
Excellent, thank you. And the last thing currently in the chat, I would love more local history Zoom presentations and also walks, please. Yes, we do one of these every month. Michael is oh so gracious to join us every month for those. So just keep an eye on the library's website, or if you want to join the library's weekly email chain, that's the best way of keeping informed of what we're doing. I was not able to attend the walk for the Grove Street Cemetery. Do you have the syllable for this? Unfortunately, we were not able to record the Night of the Grove Street Cemetery once. We do not have a recording of that. I'm sorry. I'm going to turn things over to our live audience. Do you guys have any questions?
Yeah. The previous map, there were two red dots that said historical places. Looked like one was in Bayonne and the other one was in Manhattan. Is that
Right.
correct?
So yeah, so one is going to be in the New Amsterdam settlement in Manhattan, and the other one is going to be the Pavonia settlement in Jersey City.
Okay. Is there markings for that now currently or not really?
If you head down to downtown Manhattan and you head down to where near Stone Street is, I want to say it's not really the financial district, but it's all the way by the Staten Island ferry. You can go there. It's very unsuspecting. If you walk down the street, there's just a glass covering on the floor that shows part of the original New Amsterdam settlement from when the Dutch built it back in 1620. So yeah, there's something for that. As for Pavonia, there's really nothing, unfortunately, original native settlements or Dutch settlements outside of some namings of some stuff. Most of the really historic stuff in Jersey City dates back to like when the British took over. Specifically like the Apple Tree House down near Bergen Square on Sip and Bergen Street, Bergen Ave. But that's really about it. Pavonia, again, it's an interesting place or an interesting word because it's so prevalent in Jersey City, right? The idea of Pavonia. Pavonia actually is going to be a Dutch word, and it's a Dutch word for peacock, which again, they're using kind of very similar naming traits to the natives. And it's hard for us to imagine, but at one point there were just peacocks running all over Jersey City, like wild peacock, right? So again, it's an interesting tie to the past that's still around. And again, if you've ever wondered why St. Peter's University are the peacocks, it's that kind of tie back to the historical nature of what Pavonia is, right? So again, really interesting tidbit there for those places.
So, with Stone Street, there's a black marker somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, if you ever head over to that part of New York, there's a marker about every 10 feet down there. And the old Dutch settlement one is right near the end of Stone Street.
On the end of Stone Street, I'm trying to remember if it's north, south, or east.
Going closer to the Staten Island ferry. So I guess that would be south, I guess.
So it'd be on the south end of Stone Street.
Correct.
Okay, and the one in Jersey City would be by the corner of Sip and Bergen, right? You said
Well, that's for the Apple Tree House, but there's no markers for any of the Native American locations in Jersey City or any of the original Dutch settlements.
I'm sorry, that's for the what? In Sip and Bergen?
The apple.
The Apple Tree House.
Oh, okay, so there's an apple tree house or something there that is signifies something of the history of the Lenape, right?
They have something small in there, but that's more focused on like the Revolutionary War and kind of colonial Jersey City history. Like again, that most of Hudson County, there are no markers for any native settlements, and again, it kind of ties into just how the county is just naturally always been progressing, right? As you know, early settlements into industry, into the new modern wave of rentals and apartments and things like that. So unfortunately, we've lost a lot of the native cultural sites in Hudson County.
Thank you.
May I ask a question? Hi, Michael, you mentioned the murals that we can see now. Can you repeat the places that we can see them at?
Sure. The mural of the sale of North Bergen. Oh, well, let me see. The Francis Millet mural is in the Brennan Courthouse down in Jersey City.
Okay, Jersey City?
Jersey City. And then the purchase of the territory is in the post office down on Tunnelly Avenue.
On Tunnelly Avenue.
Yeah, and 45th, 46th Street down there.
Oh, great. Go see that. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
And there was one more question in the chat box,
Sure.
again about the Grove Street Cemetery tour, which was last month's tour. I understand that it was not recorded, but are the notes available? My ancestors are buried there.
So no, I don't have any notes posted on the cemetery. I do know that their groundskeepers were very excited for the tour, and they were excited that people were interested, and you could reach their cemetery office. They have a ton of information on at least burials there. So if you're trying to figure out where a grave is or when it was purchased, or they'll be able to help you out with something like that.
Excellent, thank you. If there's no other questions in the chat box or in person, I'm going to end it by saying thank you everyone so much for coming out, both the people who came in person and online. And Michael Maring, a big thank you to you. Round of applause.
Sure. Thank you guys for everybody coming in person, online. I really appreciate giving me the time and opportunity to talk about this. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope to see you at the next one.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a nice night, everyone.
You did enjoy.